Good morning. I am Steve Weber. Welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show on Monday, February 8th, show number 122. So excited to get a new week started here. I've got a busy, jam-packed week. Guests throughout the week. I'll tell you about that in just a minute. And then, and of course, today we have a great show. John Crawshaw from England is joining us this morning. He is the author of the brand new book, the void between the words. I'm having a little void here. Anyway, the void between the words. So we're looking forward to chatting with John. And I'm going to do a monologue. I'll talk a little bit about my own writing. I'm not a published author, but I've written a few blog posts and I've used writing to, for my own benefit. And so I'll share a little bit of that in my monologue today. And then we'll hear John's story of how he had this, his story is really one of dyslexia where, he was not able to get words out. And now the words are flowing. And so we'll hear the whole story about that. And actually his book is a memoir. So looking forward to chatting with John. We'll bring him on in just in about 12 minutes or so, something like that, about 15 past the hour. All righty. So this week, tomorrow, Stacy Lamar King, he's had his own battle that he's had to deal with, but it was more of a post-traumatic stress disorder from his time serving in overseas for the Marine Corps. And so he came back and pretended like nothing was wrong. But after, he had about a 15-year run between the military and then, corporate world. And then he kind of crashed and burned and how, his story of having to, rebuild his life after that. And that's about 5 years in the past, but he's now really coming out and sharing that story of that whole thing and not getting the help that he needed when he did. Don Lynch on Wednesday, he is an energy body transformer. That's going to be a fascinating conversation. Looking forward to that. And so basically, we have energy in our bodies, and these electronic devices that we have, can kind of exasperate that. And so he kind of cleans up that energy. I don't understand it completely, but we'll both be learning on Wednesday. And then on Friday, Dory Morales joins me, and she is the publisher of Green Living magazine, Conscious Living. How do we create a more sustainable environment for ourselves? And obviously, if we all do what we can do individually, collectively, that's going to make a difference. So anyway, Green Living magazine, the publisher, Dory Morales will join us on Friday. And Thursday, I don't have a guest yet, but we'll see what happens. Maybe I'll just do a monologue, or maybe I'll fill in a guest there. And then I've got guests coming up for next week. So it's going to be, we just keep rolling here with the American Gumption Morning Show. All righty. So I want to, let's go ahead and shift gears. Let's jump into my monologue. And I had written a little bit about this in my weekly update, the Gump Date, that comes out on Sunday. So please go to AmericanGumption.com and sign up to receive that in your inbox weekly. I usually the story of what's happened, and that's evolved over the 31 weeks that I've been doing this since I launched the American Gumption website. But basically, the beginning couple of, kind of chronicled how I was getting ready to do this show and, the learning curve and all and now it's evolved into, these monologues that I end up doing once, typically every day, and always kind of try to tie them in with something that our guest is going to speaking about. So I try to make it a little bit of a launch pad, get my word in before give the guest the opportunity to share their story. And then I end up writing usually about one of those things and go into more detail. And so that's what happened. So I had one little piece of it about writing this week. And so I'll just expand on that. So writing. Okay. So way back when I was a wee lad in grade school, I did okay with writing, but I was better at like math and science. And somehow I kind of got it into my mind that, girls are good at writing, boys are good at math and science, I don't know, you get told that or whatever, and you believe that. And so I didn't put a lot of emphasis on writing, and I don't know that I put a lot of emphasis on math and science either, but I I ended up not necessarily having a love affair with writing, didn't necessarily like, literature, and, for whatever reason, those classes didn't necessarily resonate with me. So I just sort of muddled through, and, you learned how to write, construct a sentence and that sort of thing. And I certainly was adequate at all of that, but it was never what I would call a love affair. When I took my very first college, so after high school, I went directly to work and worked in a trade for 4 years. And then after that, so right when people were graduating from college, the people that I was the same age with, I ended up going back to school at night. And my very first class was an English class, like English 101, or, the basic, I don't know what it was called, writing 101 or English 101, something like that, but just a basic class. And we had to write these little essays and stuff. And I ended up, it was before computers, 1980. So, you write these things out, and maybe you were supposed to type them, but, you hand wrote them out and you handed them in. And I ended up getting all of my points off, all of my penalties for spelling, spelling mistakes. And so I initially went, oh, I'm a bad speller. But, being already kind of into the awareness and consciousness, I went, wait a minute, let's not say that I'm a bad speller. Let's say that I'm a lazy speller. So right then I went, oh, I'm a lazy speller. So I ended up starting to look up words on a regular basis as a result of that. Or really what I should have said was I have been a lazy speller up until this point, but no longer. And so anyway, I ended up, getting a dictionary and, looking words up. Now, of course, with spell check, it's a lot easier to catch all that sort of thing. So and I ended up with like a B or C in the class. And I was thinking, oh man, I wrote perfectly adequate, but I just made spelling mistakes, very simple things. So anyway, the next 30 years, I didn't do a whole lot of writing. I ended up, I ended up going to school for the next 13 years, in a marketing degree from San Jose State. So I did school papers. And so I had to do a fair amount of writing there, but it was more like, it wasn't something, again, like I was like passionate about. It was just something I tended to do because I had to. And then in work, I had certain reports. But through my work career, I became better at making lists and, bullet points, summarizing things, as opposed to writing out prose or, what I would call stories. So in 2009, I launched my, 2008, actually, I started my very first Speaking Gump website 1.0. And then I wrote the content for that. And then the next year I launched Speaking Gump 2.0 website, and I ended up doing a blog with that website. And so I started writing, and I wrote twice a week for several years. And over the course of the next 8 or 9 years, I ended up putting over 500 blog posts on that website, still there today. And that was really where I ended up learning to write. And I was doing it because I bought into the idea that I needed to create content. And if you build it, they will come, and you write interesting content, people will come. And, to some degree that worked. But what really happened was it was more of the process of writing, for myself. And what I ended up going through this, 2009 was my year of transformation, or my year of awakening, when I went, oh my gosh, I've been living a autopilot life. Let's start living a conscious life where you make decisions based on, what you want to do, as opposed to your past programming. And so anyway, I found writing to be very therapeutic for me. It allowed me to define and describe what I believed, let me say that again. It allowed me to define and describe what I believed, or what I did believe. And it was a way to process the past. And so I was like able to kind of look back and reflect on, why did I believe certain things, and why did I have these thoughts? And it allowed me to create a new set of beliefs. So essentially, I was just making it up, right? I'm just writing down what I do believe. And it gave me a way to understand and confirm, these occurring changes that were happening as I was going through it. So it was at that point, so roughly 50 years old, that I really began to, write with with joy and with like fun and getting some real value out of it. And I was living in an ideal place. I was living in the Bitterroot Valley up in Montana, the mountains, very inspirational kind of thing, and I just loved it. I really did, and I ended up spending the next couple of years doing quite a bit of writing. I sensed that I was building a foundation for something, and it was like something unknown, but the writing was like this foundation that I was doing. And that's kind of turned out to be true. My Speaking Gump website, I moved it last year to a different host. All of the articles transferred over, but there's these little marks, these little hidden marks in it. So I have to go through and clean them up. And I finally realized that. And so I've been going back and rereading all of these original blog posts that I wrote 10 years ago. And I've been just cleaning up the, like, quotation marks come out as question marks. And if you have ellipses, it turns out to be in a question mark. So there's all these question marks that are in there that don't belong there. And you need to change them back to some other kind of a, little more. But anyway, it's forcing me to go through, reread it, and correct all those things. And hyphens turn into question marks. So if you have a conjunction, it's like don't, D-O-N, question mark T. You got to go clean all that. So I've been doing all that, but it's forcing me to go back and read what I wrote. And actually what I wrote was perfectly acceptable from a writing point of view. My thinking was a little bit, it's evolved since then, but the writing itself was pretty good. And, I'm surprising myself as I go back and read it. And it's really the foundation of the beliefs that I have today. So anyway, that's it on my writing. I think I'm going to just wrap up by giving a William Faulkner quote. And I ran across this during that time period, and I've been hanging on to it ever since. And Faulkner said, "I never know what I think about something until I read what I've written on it. I never know what I think about something until I read what I've written on it." And that was me. That was my writing. It was like my writing was me allowing to decide what I think about something. So as I wrote, I would write, I would edit it, I would write, and then boom, you hit send. And then you could go on like live on your website and look at it and go, oh, that's what I believe. And it was kind of a fun feeling. And that's very true today. As I write my weekly updates, Gump dates, it's really my, writing what I believe. And so writing's a great thing for me. And, but I haven't done a book yet. I've written one book 3 different times. It's eventually going to come out there. So we'll just leave that at that. We'll talk about that another day. All right. Well, let's see. John is in the green room. Let's go ahead and bring him on live, and let's get this show on the road. John Crawshaw, are you with us this morning? Good morning.
Reading you loud and clear, Steve. How are you?
Doing great. Thank you. And I appreciate your coming on, because it inspired me to think about my writing a little bit. So thank you for that. And I'm anxious to hear about, your journey. So we have 2 rules here, John, as we get started. The first rule is that when I have a brand new guest on, I read a little bio that I prepared so that the audience knows who you are, and then we play a song, and the song is titled the First Time Guest Welcoming Song. So is it okay if I read your bio and then play the welcoming song for you?
Absolutely.
Good. Then we'll get into the details of the story. We'll have no more rules after that, other than to have some fun and to have a good conversation.
Sounds great.
All right. So John Crawshaw has battled dyslexia all his life. I'm going to put my glasses on. It'll make it a little easier. His new book and memoir, The Void Between Words. And let me do this. Let's go ahead and do a quick screen share, because I have the book up there. I'm going to put that up there. There we go. Let's see. That should do it. Look at that. The Void Between Words. There it is. We'll talk about that title in just a minute. And I love the between, the E's are going backwards, and it looks like young John is upside down in that picture. All
He's
right.
confused.
All righty. Well, good. All right. So anyway, we'll get back to that. So his new book and memoir, The Void Between Words, chronicles his struggle with reading, writing, self-doubt, and high anxiety. It's the story of a boy who is bright and inquisitive, but misunderstood. Specifically, John had a misunderstood mind. It's the story of a person going to the brink of despair, but then surprisingly turning what had betrayed him into his greatest gift and overcoming his greatest fear. John found joy in words and the wonder of literature and began a passionate love affair with words, becoming an author. At the age of 50, John wrote a fictional novel, The Swing, due to be published later in 2021. It is preceded by his moving and funny memoir, The Void Between Words. John has a passion for the natural world and an especially close affinity with trees. We'll explore that a little bit. You've mentioned that. Trees have inspired his writing in many ways and given him the courage to entertain and inspire others. So, John Crawshaw, welcome to the American Gumption Morning Show. I'm glad you're here.
Thank you so much, Steve. It seems really strange to hear that you're calling me an author, because for 50 years, I never expected that would ever happen. Not that I ever dreamed of it.
Well, congratulations. Right. You know, that's really the gist of what we're going to get into. So let me play the song, because we have that rule that we have to play the song. And if we ever bring you back, like when The Swing gets published, when we bring you back to talk about that, we will not be allowed to play this first-time guest welcoming theme, because it's only for first-time guests.
Okay.
All right, here we go. Have you ever had a marching band welcome you to a show before, John?
I can honestly say never before, but it felt like they were almost here right by my side, marching through my lounge as we speak, and the cheerleaders with them with all the razzmatazz.
Well, very good. We appreciate that you're here, and we want to always welcome our guest in a special way. So now, one of the questions I had right off the bat, we're going to get into your younger years, but it says that you're published the memoir is published first. Although it sounds like you've already written The Swing, the novel. Tell us a little bit about why that happened, and what's the order of your publishing your memoir first.
Yes, well, it's sort of in keeping with a dyslexic brain, really. You never do anything to schedule in any proper order. And really, the voids between words is the story of how I wrote The Swing. And as I said before, it was such a shock to hear that you would call me an author, because I never dreamt of being an author. I never thought that I would write anything, let alone a novel. But as we'll find out probably as I talk more about it, the words came to me. And, in my 50th year, it took so long to get to that point, but the words just came to me. And I'd always had a huge fear of words. I never wrote anything. I never read a novel before. So these words coming to me, and this sort of passion inside me to write a novel was just the most incredible feeling. And having woken up in the early hours of the morning with ideas and words, I started to write them down, and I wrote a novel, to my complete surprise. But while that was with my editor, because there's a process of getting the book out, I didn't know when I sent it to her whether it would be any good. You know, I thought that she would just laugh at me because this crazy dyslexic guy had just put down a few words. But actually, she took it very seriously, and she helped me a great deal. But while that process was happening, I couldn't contain the energy and enthusiasm to write the story of how I wrote it. So that's how it happened. It just sort of overtook me, and I guess I was sort of scared that I might lose that impetus if I didn't do it there and then. That I might, that it might get tainted or faded in my mind somehow. So it just took over, and I got really excited about it, and it just happened that it came out first.
What is your writing process like? Do you have you settled into a routine already with it? Do you write by just on the computer? Kind of tell us a little bit about your writing style and your process.
Yeah, sure. It's an interesting one, actually, because I really struggle with brain to pen. So writing on a written sheet is still, it's like me going back to my early years at school. It torments me. I can't do it. I can't read my own writing. I can't spell. It just doesn't work. I could not write a book with that system. And this is where computers have helped me so much, because they have effectively allowed me to make mistakes, and mistakes without ridicule. And so my confidence is allowed to grow with computers. And of course, there's a spell check, and that spell check isn't it's not doing it for you. But what that did for me was it enabled me to learn those words and under my or in my own time. So
yeah,
go on.
I definitely blossomed as a in my own writing, by using the computer. And I anything I write, it's just little scribbles and little notes, like little reminders. But any kind of a serious writing has to be done on the computer for me, because then, it's like right there, and you can go back and read it. It's easy to read, it's legible, and you can just begin to edit it so easily. So I love that. People will often say, "Oh, I have to write things out," and I kind of think of that as old school. I don't get it. So anyway, I'm glad to hear that you and I are similar in that regard, as far as the using the computer to put the ideas down.
Yes. When I'm doing my initial mapping out, when I've got the ideas, I do it with a pen. It's a little bit like my golfing. I'm right-handed at everything, but I'm a left-handed golfer. I don't know why. And so when I come to do the ideas, I use a pen. It's like a spider's crawled across it. But then when it comes to the computer, and this is where the revelation for me was that the words just keep coming. And the first time I wrote 2,000 words, I cried. Because it was astonishing that I was able to do that. And I almost did it in one go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. Do you have a certain time of day that you like to write, morning or evening or, afternoons? I mean, is there a schedule that way that you're on?
Very early mornings are probably my most inspired times.
Yeah.
I often wake with the words of a genius in my mind. Not the words thought of by me, but this genius force, whatever it is, they come to me. I wake up, and that's really how it all started. Was that I would wake up with these words and then go back to sleep and not remember them the next morning.
Right.
So then I started to make a cup of tea, get the pen or the computer and write them. So that time in the morning when it's still dark and it's quiet, I seem to be most effective. But now I can write anytime, and I tend to like a busy situation. So on a train or in a cafe, even on the street cafe. So I'm listening to people and I'm aware of the buzz. somehow that gives me inspiration as well.
Oh, very good, very good. So let's go ahead and let's take a trip back in time, and you're this young lad going to school, and you're mixing letters up, and you're confused, and there was some of the things that were said that an academic failure, branded a no hoper with little to offer. Well, that's not a very good. That doesn't inspire a lad, does it? My goodness. What was that like for you? Actually, I kind of know what it was like. Not because I was treated that way, but I knew kids that were in our classes that kids were mean to each other, and but I was never quite on the receiving end the way you were. What was that like for you?
It was confusing. There's no two ways about it. And if I can just step back a little bit before that, I was a bright, inquisitive, happy boy. I wanted to learn. I wanted to know about things. And we had a field at the back of our house, a long grass. And I used to lay on my back there and look up through the branches of this huge tree, this mature tree, into the sky, and sort of ponder the world, the planet, how I fitted into it. I didn't know the answers. I couldn't really work it out, but I wanted to know where I fitted into the whole picture. And I was inquisitive. Mm-hmm. And then I went to school, and I was told that I was lazy and I was stupid and I was incapable. Mm. And I didn't understand that.
Right.
It didn't make sense because I was being told something different to what I thought in my own mind. And that was, it destroyed me, to be honest.
Yeah, we want to fit in. We want to be part of it. And so suddenly, when you were living that innocent childhood life, going out in the backyard and dreaming, you were fitting in perfectly fine. And then all of a sudden you go to school and you're not fitting in.
Mm. Well, the subtitle of the book is A Lifetime of Being Different. And that's how I felt. Straight away, I felt different. And everybody knew I was different. In class, when we were asked to read a passage and then put your hand up when you finished, I could sense the hands going up around me. And I was still on the first line. I was panicking. The anxiety that comes with that makes you stressed. And but everybody around me knew that I was different. And of course, then came the ridicule and the expectation that I was useless, that I was worthless, and there were some cruel times.
So that first initial disappointment or realization happens, but what happens by the time you're reaching what we call high school here in the US? I mean, when you're in your your teenage years, I mean, did it get any better? Did it get worse? What did it just continue and perpetuate? What happened as you went through your schooling years?
I believed it, and I became entrenched in that process because I struggled. It's like you were talking about being a lazy speller. I'm not a lazy speller. I just can't spell, and I used to try and be helpful to my reader, because if there was a word I didn't know which letters went in there, I put all of the conceivable letters in there, so that, like a fruit stall, my reader could pick the letters that were right for them. I thought I was being helpful, so I definitely wasn't lazy, but I bought into the fact that I wasn't capable, and really, the main or one of the main emphasis of the book is the mental health issues that come with that. And these are not necessarily specific to dyslexia. They're common feelings, but when you're feeling worthless and you have low self-esteem, my confidence I didn't have any confidence at all. And so all through my schooling, I worked out that the best thing to do was not say anything. Never ask a question in class. never bring attention to yourself. So I sort of hid away, really. I became quite solitary. I had friends, obviously, but I don't think that they really understood either, because the big thing about being a dyslexia is that you cover it up. You might have heard people talking about coping strategies, and there are many famous people that are dyslexic that have covered it up. Steven Spielberg just came out at the age of 60, I think it was. He covered up his dyslexia by making films, by talking pictures, rather than reading, writing. So those mental health issues just became worse and worse and worse. I couldn't see a way out of it.
So you became, so you finished your school. Did you go to like university, or did you, so what did you do? Did you get, what kind of jobs did you end up with in your 20s? And, what were you doing at that point?
Well, there was no way I felt I could go to university. And I didn't want to do any kind of study. It just scared me to death for the rest of my life. So that was a complete non-starter. But I went to the careers office to get advice on what career I could get, and she looked at my perceived results, and it wasn't looking good. And I knew I didn't want to be in an office. I knew I didn't want to be reading. I didn't want the secret to get out. So I needed a job where I didn't have to read and write, basically, or talk much. And at the time, I'm from industrial Yorkshire in England, steel industry, coal mining, all that sort of thing. So that's where the usual jobs were. But of course, back then, we're talking 1985 when I left school. There was high unemployment, so you were grateful for anything you could get, really. And she I could tell that she was getting frustrated with me. And she said, well, you need to tell me something about you. What did you do last night? And I said, oh, that's easy. I made some cheese on toast and I sprinkled spring onion on top. And she said, great. You're going to be a chef. And that's what I did. I went on what's called a YTS, a youth training scheme. And I was put into the kitchen of a maximum security prison. Wow. Yeah.
So then did you do this for years and years? Cooking up meals for the inmates?
Exactly that. Yeah, I started at the very bottom, and it was an interesting place to work because there was, within a kitchen brigade, as they call them, it's almost like an army team. There's a hierarchy from the head chef down,
sure,
right down to the youth training scheme chef, who just basically does all the horrible jobs. But I learned that the best thing for me was to just work hard, show willing, and just say yes to everything.
Okay.
And so I did, and I learned from incredible people, actually. And although it was a prison, we cooked everything from scratch there. Nothing came out of a packet or a freezer. The meat came in as a carcass, and we boned and rolled that, and we made our own custard. There's an episode in the book about making the custard. It wasn't out of a packet. So it was a great experience. But I could go on for hours. We haven't got enough time to talk about it all, Steve. But
you get to the point, though. When does the light bulb start to go on that says, "Wait a minute, I should be writing and doing this"? I mean, at what point? How long ago was that? Just a few years back, or? Well,
that was 30 odd years ago, and the writing only came 2 years ago.
Okay.
So there's 50 years of not writing, really. But what happened at the prison was that they offered me a promotion. I got a job. I was off the YTS within a couple of months. I was willing, I was keen, so I was working hard. I became a trainee chef. I ended up going to college, which was a big shock. I didn't want to go. In fact, I even contemplated packing the whole thing in because it meant going back to college. But I persevered and I became qualified. And they offered me a promotion, but I could never believe that anyone thought that I was good enough to get a promotion. It just seemed a ridiculous thing. But I took it, and I grew and grew and grew. But it did end. It did end with an interesting story of when I handed in my notice in and I went traveling.
Mm.
And that was kind of the beginning of the end, really, because that opened my eyes to the wider world and to people and to cultures and to language, and freedom. School had always been a captivating place for me, so the freedom of traveling was an incredible experience.
So you had worked for them for roughly 30, maybe shy of 30 years, and then you give in your notice. I mean, what prompted you to give in your notice and say, I'm going to go traveling? There must have been something that triggered that.
Well, the traveling was way back then. So the trigger was that I felt trapped. I felt like there was more to the world. I didn't like working when no one else was working. If there's anybody, any viewers have worked in the industry, you're working when everybody else is enjoying themselves.
Right.
Hot conditions, long hours, that kind of thing. I knew there was something else for me, but that was way back then. And in fact, when I came back from traveling,
okay,
that's when my mum, my fantastic mum, handed me a piece of paper. It was a cutout from a newspaper. I think it was the Guardian newspaper or the Times or something. And it said a countryside management university degree. Why don't you have a look at this? She said. I said, that's not for me. I can cook meals for boffins at universities, but I could never go to university. And I thought about it for long and hard. I did other jobs, and I gave him a call. I gave the guy a call. He answered, and I slammed the phone down. I hadn't rehearsed what I was going to say. I thought I needed to sound intelligent, and I thought, oh no, there was someone there. But I ended up going to university, and that was an absolute revelation, because we could use computers, and and the course was countryside management. I was learning about something I'd always been passionate about. So when I laid in the field before I went to school and looked through that tree, I always felt an affinity with nature, and particularly trees. So to be learning about them was just incredible.
So did you, at university, did you study trees? I mean, tell us about the tree connection, because you mentioned it in your, on your website, it's mentioned. And so what is it with the trees?
Well, as I said, I always felt that I was at one with nature. So I was confused about how I fitted in with life and school. But when I was out in nature, it always felt safe and reliable and honest. Nature wasn't telling me conflicting things. And there was a tree that I found when I went conquering. Do you know conkers in the States? The horse chestnut?
No. Say it again. What, conquer?
Conquer, yes.
No, I'm not sure. No.
Well, the horse chestnut, it's a big red seed.
Okay.
And what we do is we drill through the middle and put an entire shoelace, and you compete with someone to bash their conker, and the winner is the one with the intact conker at the end of the game.
Okay.
So, I'm sure you must have horse chestnuts over there, but I was out exploring for a winning conker, and I found this tree and climbed up it. And in many ways, that tree became a den, but it became a sanctuary. And I was able to do a lot of thinking there, and I even contemplated ending everything in that tree. Life just seemed so hard, then why would I bother? But the tree it communicated to me, and I had no idea at the time what it was, but it stopped me from doing what I was thinking I was going to do, and it gave me an energy. There was an energy came through it, and that fascinated me, even though I didn't know what it was.
I lived in Montana for 10 years, and it was kind of a pasture area, but there was this one tree on the property, right on the corner of it, and it had 7 huge trunks coming out of it, going up. And so just this big, massive umbrella. And so I, for the 10 years that I was there, I always had a chair that sat underneath of it. And different times of the seasons, I'd go out there and enjoy just being under it. In the summer and the heat, it was a wonderful spot because it was cool. And then in the winter, when it was just all bare with no leaves, it was beautiful. So I get trees. I like it, but very good.
Well, trees, without trees, we wouldn't be alive. And we live side by side, trees, every day of our lives. I think it's easy to forget that we are humans, we're animals, we're part of the ecology of the planet. And trees are fundamental to that. They give us the oxygen, they take our carbon dioxide. But like you said, the shade, the feeling that you get out among trees. I'm always interested to know if other people feel that. I know that they do. But
so you 2 years ago you decided, I'm going to write the novel, and you write it. How long did it take you? And we're going to get to the memoir, to the void between words. But the novel that you wrote, did you crank it out like in a couple of months or a couple of weeks or a year? How long did it take?
The initial writing I wrote quite quickly, and I didn't know. I'd never read a novel. I'd never picked a novel up in my life. So I'd done at university. I'd read textbooks. I'd read scientific books.
Sure.
I'd got into the swing of that, but I couldn't ever see the joy of anyone reading a novel. Why would you put yourself through that torment? So it was a shock that I felt like I wanted to do it. And I went into a bookshop and I secretly took this novel off the shelf. I felt really self-conscious about it, but I needed a manual. I needed to know how many words on a line, how many lines to a page, whether the full stop came in a speech mark or out of it, all those sorts of things, because I was just writing words. And I wrote quick, and then I left a gap of probably a few months because it just seemed absurd. And I just kept them picking it up later, and as ideas, it was very much, I think, like an artist might do. As they get inspiration, then they'll paint and they'll produce. It was the same. It took me 2 years effectively to write.
And you mentioned a woman. Is this like an editor or a publicist or who was that who helped you? Who said, "Oh, it's actually quite good"? I didn't quite understand that at the very beginning of our interview.
Yeah, my editor. And I just sought her from the national acclaimed editors association, whoever. So I didn't know who she was, but she is from Yorkshire. She is from where I'm from, and in the book, there's Yorkshire humour and reference to that sort of area. So I thought she'll be great. She'll understand what I'm trying to say, and she took it seriously, and that really surprised me. But she obviously didn't write the words, but she helped me to say, well, you need to cut this out, you need to put that there, don't mention this bit, that kind of thing.
Did she then become like kind of a coach to you, and did she say, like, let's go ahead and write a memoir first, or was that your idea? How did that happen?
Yeah, I haven't been coached at all. It's not my way. My background is not seeking help.
Yeah.
So
avoiding help.
Yeah, someone might see my vulnerability if I seek help. So no, I'll do it myself. But I do have other people around me who've been very helpful.
Very good. When I started writing my blog back in 2009, I had an editor who helped me, and I would write the blog, but then she would come back and make little suggestions, and it was a magical year or 18 months that we worked together, because they were my ideas, but she helped me to see them in a way that maybe made sense to an audience. And so I grew very dependent on her in terms of, like, building my own confidence. Then I ended up switching editors, and the next editor was just strictly kind of a like a grammar editor instead of an idea editor. And I realized that I didn't need a grammar editor at that point. I needed an idea editor, to help me with my my big picture thinking. So it just was very interesting experience of doing that, and being vulnerable and showing, because writing is really what you think and believe. So it's kind of like bearing your soul. And so when you're asking someone to critique it, it's it can be humbling, scary.
Absolutely. I needed a grammar editor. The ideas, I didn't have a problem with the ideas. I didn't have a problem with how I wanted to write it. But I needed someone to just pull me into line now and again when it needed to look like a book.
Mm-hmm. So let's go ahead and throw the cover up one more time, just to share with the audience, and you can tell us how did the cover come to be? What's the story? Who? It's quite brilliant, but tell us your side of this version of it.
Well, the upside down boy was me. I felt upside down. I felt confused, and I thought that image portrayed that. There was this boy who just felt different to everybody else, and quite difficult to show on a picture. But I I like the idea of the upside down, and of course the inverted E's is almost the gateway into the void. The void's a fascinating place to go, because that's where I access my subconscious brain. That's really what helped me to write the novel, is by going into the void. And when I was at school, it was a place where I escaped. It's the gaps between the words. I always saw the white gaps rather than the words themselves, and they were incredible pictures. If you ever look at a page, they can be quite fascinating. And it was a place that I could delve into and escape. But the process in which I go into the void, and I still do it now. In fact, I did it 10 minutes before I came on air because it just helps me to focus. Is a little bit like, do you know the Magic Eye books? The sort of coloured image on a page, and there's a 3D image within it.
Yes.
That you stare at it.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like that. You sort of stare, you unfocus your eyes, and then your eyes sort of focus and you get the image. It's very much like that. And I go into the void, and I've cured my fear of flying through going into the void. I've cured my confidence issues. I've convinced myself that I'm an author. It's a powerful place, and you get to know more about that in the book, obviously.
Yeah, no, I love the I love the transformation that you've gone through, because you lived in fear for most of your life, and it was you were taught to be fearful, and so you had to unlearn all of those like feelings of inferiority, and you had to reconnect with that innocent boy who was curious and wondering.
Yes, because that innocent boy was always dying to get out and be released from those shackles. It had frustrated me for so long, and I wanted to be free. And he was always in there.
Well, you're certainly I wouldn't. It's hard to believe that it's only been a couple of years, because you feel I can feel your confidence, and you've arrived in the sense that you've made the transition. You're not hiding anymore. You spent basically your life, your adult life, hiding, keeping yourself from being exposed. And yet here you are. So I think this is a wonderful story. And what do you credit, the final kind of like pushing through to, that void that you talked about? I mean, is that the essence of what made the transformation possible?
Well, I'd hate to think there was anybody else that's going through the same thing. Fundamentally, the pain and the anguish of all that. And there will be people, there'll be lots of people internationally that feel the same way. And it really genuinely breaks my heart to think they'll be going through that. So the breaking out was about me hopefully inspiring others to think you're not worthless. You are capable. You do have something to offer this world, no matter what it is. There might not be authors, there might be engineers, they might be artists, they might be doctors, they might be, show hosts, whatever. But it's not talked about a lot, and that's where my passion lies now. That's why I'm enthusiastic about it, and why I have the confidence. But it's the energy came from trees. Huge influence on my life, sheer determination. Because one thing I learned was that when you're down, when you're at that low point, when you just can't see that there's any way out of it, then that's the point when there's that little tiny seed of something. It's there in everyone, and it doesn't come automatically. You have to go down to that low point to be able to see the seed and then grow it. And the determination then that I had to fight back and to make good and prove myself was overbearing, really. And I think the fact that I was able to sort of get into my subconscious through the void, it helped me talk to myself that actually, I was okay.
Yeah, great. Now, this is wonderful. John's website is jacrawshaw.com, and his book is The Void Between Words. It's available on Amazon and I guess wherever else you can. But go to the website. You'll see the link there. You'll see about it. They have, it looks like you have some different things that you'll be doing. Although I guess we're not doing book signings these days because we're locked into our studies, writing, being forced to write.
No, that's a shame. But if I'm always glad to hear other people's stories and how they've overcome their issues. So if people want to get in touch with me through the website, discuss the book, whatever, I'd be delighted.
What is next? I mean, you've got the other book coming out sometime later this year. Do you have other ideas, other projects are already on the drawing board? What do you see, going forward?
Well, I work. I run a business. I'm a tree consultant. I work in tree protection. So that's how I earn my money. I'd like to think that being an author could replace that. That would be an absolute dream for me. Inside my brain, I need to get the swing just ready for publication. But I've got a trilogy that's bursting.
Oh, great.
So hopefully there'll be that series of 3 coming after that as well.
Good. And we have a mutual friend, Nikki Roscoe. I did an interview with Nikki months back, and that's when we first met. You were kind and you reached out. And we connected, and of course, here we are now talking. Nikki's been a friend of the show. What's your connection? How have you two gotten to know each other?
Yeah, she's a wonderful person, is Nikki. She's a great inspiration, and she's a wonderful knowledge. What she knows about, the things that she knows about is incredible. But she's a friend, and we communicated about tree contact. So she'd been asking me for it's probably a few years now to run a sort of tree energy course, forest bathing type situation, and I've been writing a book, so I haven't been able to do that.
She not so recently she moved, or very recently she moved, but she showed a picture of this little tree garden that was outside of her old house, like a kind of a circle of trees, and she had pictures of it like in the different seasons. One, with leaves on it, kind of more in the winter time. It was, so I did know she had a tree connection, but I didn't realize it was beyond that. So this is wonderful. We are all connected. There are no coincidences. People meet for the right reasons. And so if you feel that you have, a reason that you need to communicate with John, then go to his website, jacrawshaw.com, and search them out. I definitely recommend you get The Void Between the Words, whether you're someone who had your own challenges and difficulties, because it'll just be an inspiration to help you overcome it. And or if you didn't have maybe those same types of we all have those feelings of self-doubt and uncertainty, and whether it's depending on what the situation is, it exists in all of us. And there's those things that we take with us from our childhood that we have to unlearn. And I am grateful that you unlearned that you were you unlearned that that you are a no-hoper with little to offer. I mean, that'll destroy a person to be told that when he's a child, or an academic failure. So anyway, here you are. It's a great story. I'm proud of you, and I'm honored to be your friend here. And you obviously have a lot of gumption to have written your first book. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Steve. Honestly, that it's gone straight in there. You hopefully will become a great friend, and thank you for your kind words.
What would be the last thing you'd like to say as we wrap up here? People who, obviously we encourage people to go get the book, read it. But what would what message would you give to people who feel like they, maybe have been misunderstood and lived a life not being able to, be authentically themselves?
I would say be true to yourself. Be free, be confident to be free about who you are. And life puts many constraints on us, but just find out who you are, and it doesn't matter what other people say or think, because you being you can't go wrong. And what I would say is, if you can get in touch through natural energy to help you do that, then, like me, it's a powerful thing, and I would encourage anyone to do that.
Well, John, thank you so much for joining us. Good luck to you. We will have you back when the novel comes out. How does that sound?
That'll be amazing. That'll be really amazing.
But we cannot play the first time guest song because that's already been done today. So
maybe we need a second time guest song.
All righty. Well, thank you, John. Have a great rest of your day, and we sure appreciate your taking the time and joining us today. Thank you. Good luck to you.
Thank you so much.
All right. Well, that was John Crawshaw, the author of The Void Between the Words, his brand new novel. Go to Amazon or go to jacrawshaw.com and check out what John has. Follow him, because his novel will be coming up, here in, I'm not sure when exactly, but sometime in 2021. We'll leave it at that. And we'll have him back to talk about the novel when he joins us then. So, all righty. Well, that's it. Let's go ahead and just let you know what's happening the rest of the week, and then I'll sign off for today. Tomorrow, Stacey Lamar King. On Wednesday, Don Lynch, the Energy Body Transformer. And on Friday, Dory Morales, publisher of Green Living magazine. And their tagline is Conscious Living, which we are all about conscious living at American Gumption and Spirituality Gone Wild. Alrighty, so that's it for today's show. I appreciate everybody joining us today. Thank you, John Crawshaw. Again, his website, jacrawshaw.com. Have a great day. We'll see you tomorrow with Stacey Lamar King.